So I'm going to be talking about ClickOps and ScriptOps and DevOps and things. Bit of a journey about delivery maturity. Some of the themes in this will, I think, resonate with some of the talks earlier, particularly Sam's one. Oh, did that do something? Okay, yeah. So before we start, question for you, and we'll do this by a show of hands, is how do you make your VMs? And if you have a minion who makes your VMs for you, and you just say, make me a VM, how do they do that? And if you've got an automation system doing it, and you know what's in the black box, that's what we're doing. If you don't know what's in the black box or what your minion does, don't worry. So hands up, who makes the VM by clicking through on a web page? Okay. Who does it by running a script? That could be some Power CLI or some PowerShell. No? And who does it with a pipeline or Terraform and that sort of thing? And the rest of you have a minion who does it, and right, got you. So yeah, a bit about me, with my corporate slide on kind of here. My name's Chris Bradshaw, so I'm a cloud platform engineer by day. I work for Telefonica Tech, whose building you can just about see the back of through the window. But by night, I'm a VMwareUserGroup leader. I've also been a VMware vExpert for 11 years now, I think. And I have a LinkedIn and a website, so I do less than I used to, but still do quite a bit of blogging. So my website's It Should Just Work. I'm also a bit of a map nerd. I like going out in the countryside and navigating around with a map or something. So if you've ever seen any of my presentations before, there can be a bit of a theme of me getting lost out in the countryside. And I'm going to carry that on here. So imagine you want to go somewhere and you want to get there and you can just get in the car and go. So I'm going from my house. I live in sort of North Surrey and I want to go to Wembley Stadium. I can just get in my car and I can drive to the end of the road. And I can drive out of my village. Yeah, I've got that local knowledge to like get me out to a main road where there's signs that don't say village shop. And there's a sign there that says motorway London. It's like, right, that's what I'm going to do. I've got a little bit of knowledge, so I know Wembley Stadium is in London. That's the direction I want to head in. And I get onto the M3 and I tootle up the M3 towards London and I keep on going straight on past first couple of junctions. And then there's a sign saying M25 Heathrow. There's no sign saying Wembley Stadium, but there's a sign saying Heathrow Airport. And I said, well, hang on, bit of local knowledge. I know that Heathrow Airport's near Wembley. That's probably the kind of direction I want to go in. So I follow that sign for a bit. And I sit on the M25, probably quite stationary for times. And then I get to another sign that says M40 Wembley Stadium. Got the sign I want to. I'm just following that sign. And I follow that down. I think we go down past Northolt, if I remember rightly, and round some side roads and keep on following the signs to Wembley Stadium. And I get there. And in the infrastructure world, this is a bit like ClickOps. Okay, bear with me on this. This will make sense. So ClickOps is I'm going to that web browser and I'm clicking through a wizard or something. You know, it could be the old vSphere client. If anyone is still running that, please upgrade. But generally these days a web-based thing. It could be your VCF web-based client. You could still be using vCenter. You could be on another cloud, so your AWS portal, your GCP portals, your Azure portals. But essentially, I'm clicking on a button and that gives me a load of road signs to follow. So it gives me a sign saying, what do you want to call this VM? How much memory do you want on it? What network do you want to attach it to? And And some of those signs I want to follow, and some of them I just ignore it and take the default and click next, and that's like carrying straight on the road. But as the first way in my car would get me to Wembley, this would also get me a virtual machine. If I want to make a second virtual machine, I can do exactly the same thing again. I can start at the beginning and I can click through, and hopefully I've done everything the same, except the name and the IP address, obviously. But generally, I've done the same process. I've probably got the things the same, but I might have taken a different turn somewhere. I can't guarantee that those are the same. And if I wanted to tell Rob how to make a virtual machine by this way, I'd basically have to write down some instructions, some directions to say, well, I clicked on this and then I clicked on that and then I wrote this in this box. I couldn't just say to him, well, I just followed the wizard. In the same way that it would be tricky to say, well, just follow the road signs and you'll get to Wembley. So we're talking about directions now. I've written some directions. So I can do this. I can sit down at home with my map book and I can say, turn right out of drive, turn right at end of road, straight onto the pub, left, join the main road, right onto the M3, M25 junction, whatever it is, take the exit to Heathrow, M40 and so on. Like the road signs say, but now I've written that down. And that's a great set of instructions if you want to get from my house to Wembley Stadium. And I can give that to Rob. And as long as he starts off on my drive, he can get to Wembley Stadium. Sorry for picking on you here, Rob. And this is like ClickOps. So this is like using your PowerShell, your PowerCLI, any other CLI system, or potentially even just a list of written instructions that you then click in. But you're saying, do this first, then do this, etc., and finally do that. And you'll have your virtual machine at the end of it. So it's probably new -VM with some parameters on it. You might have a new virtual network in there. Reading out PowerShell doesn't really work for this, does it? I've refrained from doing a demo because I don't think that would be reliable, and you don't want to look at my code. But this is the same sort of principle. This works. I can give this script to somebody else. They can do it. I can run the script again and again and again and again. Obviously, changing the virtual machine name because we don't want conflicts, or being clever in my script and putting a random number in there or something. And it will generate the same thing. If I'm starting off from this point where I don't have that VM, it will create one, and it will look like this. If I've already got that VM and I want to change it, so I wanted to take the memory from 4 gig to 8 gig or something, that won't work. So, well, hang on, this VM already exists. You've already got VM-1. It's got 4 gig. It's staying with that because my script's going to bomb out. And that's like, me giving the instructions to Rob and him trying to follow them from his driveway. It's different to that blank environment we started with. Thankfully, we don't have post-it notes on our steering wheels very often anymore, and map books on the passenger seat, and all those horrible ways of driving we used to have. We now have this thing called SatNav. So we can get in our car and we can tell the device in the car or the phone, I want to go to Wembley Stadium. And it says, turn left. And actually I want to turn right. It just thinks my car's parked the other way around. But after that, it's okay. And it says turn right. And I go down there and I get to the turn and I turn right and I follow up to the motorway and M25, M40, and it all works. And if I take a wrong turn anyway along the way, that's fine. The GPS goes, oh, hang on, you're not where I expected you to be. I said turn left there, you went right, and it will adapt to that, and it will change the instructions and get me there. And it will also work if I give it to Rob and he puts the GPS on and says go to Wembley Stadium from his house. And this is where declarative infrastructure as code work. So this is things like Terraform that Sam was talking about earlier. There's plenty of others there. There's a Bicep if you're in Azure, Pulumi, Puppet, PowerShell decide state configuration is this sort of idea. And here I'm not saying do this, then do this, then do this. I'm saying I want a virtual machine. I want a virtual machine that looks like this. I want it to be called this. I want this much memory in it. I want it connected to this network, and so on. It's a different way of programming. So if anyone's been a software engineer or dabbled in that, it's a different way of looking at this. It's declarative rather than imperative. But this is the same as that map. The map. I'm just telling my sat nav, I want to go to Wembley Stadium. So I'm just telling my Terraform provider, I just want to make a virtual machine in my VCF environment, and I want it to look like this. So that's great. But our sat-nav got better. Sat-navs got connected to the internet. I don't know, did anyone here have a TomTom in their car? Yeah. So there was no internet connection. You had to update the maps manually at generally great expense and using a card or a serial cable or something. But now we have them on our phones. They're connected to the internet. They're built into our cars. Our cars are connected to the internet. Google Maps has, taken over. Other mapping solutions are available, apparently. They have things like traffic alerts. They have road closure warnings. So now they know the environment around me as it looks like today, and they can make changes based on that. They can say, well, I know that road's not particularly good. There's been an accident. We won't use that road today. And this is where we can improve on that Terraform, and we can add in things like the code analysis, the best practices, the security checks. So Sam's demo earlier, he was getting Copilot to read the code and suggest, I'm going to change the code. I'm going to make this more secure. I'm going to make this follow our company practices. You can do all that without AI. There's tools out there. Chekhov, if you're using, I think that works with a variety of platforms to do security checks. There's tools like Infracost out there that do the same sort of things. And they can analyze your code because you've got that your Terraform script saying, create me a VM. I want it to look like this. And it's also done a plan, which is essentially what it's going to do. I'm going to, these are my directions on my post-it note, but I've made them automatically for you. There's lots of tools out there that can analyze all that, and they can do that before you've touched any hardware, before you've got to your environment. So rather than, generally in the ClickOps and definitely in the ClickOps world, you'd have to click through the thing, and it's like, at the end of it, it's like, oh, my security guy's just phoned up because I've joined that to the wrong network, and that's now out on the internet with an open firewall and Windows 3.11 installed on it or something. You can have a set of rules, and you can take standard sets of rules from open source providers that say, well, yeah, we don't really suggest that you do Windows 3.11 on an open network. So by running that on against the plan and the Terraform code, or whichever IAC language you've got, you've stopped that before it's gone out there. You can also take that from a FinOps point of view. So you can say, you can analyze the code and say, well, and this is much easier to do in a public cloud environment than on your vSphere environment, but those tools are getting there. you can say this is going to cost you £3,000 extra a month to run. Or there isn't the capacity to do that in your on-premises environment. You need to do it in another cloud. And it can stop you there before you've pressed go and the meter started spinning on your cloud account. So yeah, it's a tool that's added on. It's got in there, and we've gone from ClickOps to ScriptOps to DevOps to, say, DevSecOps, because and I've seen various people stick words in between the dev and the ops, and it gets really long and makes about as much sense as my analogies. But you can add those extra tools in. You're essentially making your delivery system, your delivery pipeline, whatever, more mature. And I can stretch this analogy further because, why waste it? Vibe coding. So we saw a little bit of that earlier, but if you go onto your, you just open up your Visual Studio Code and say, without all the nice plugins, say, write me a script or make me some Terraform that will create my VM, you'll get something interesting, and you have to go back to it again and again until it's right. And this is a bit like getting in your car, driving to the end of the road, winding down the window and saying, "Excuse me, sir, how do I get to Wembley?" And if they're a nice person, they'll say, "Oh yeah, you go up there and you turn and take the motorway and head towards London, left a bit." And you drive there and you get there, you finish those instructions, and you're at the stadium. Unfortunately, it's Chelsea. Sorry to any Chelsea fans, that wasn't an insult against Chelsea. It's just I'm looking for Wembley here. So you get there. So you wind the window down again. Say, "Excuse me, ma'am, can you tell me how to get to Wembley?" And her instructions get you a bit closer, and so on and so on and so on until you get the end result you were looking for. So vibe coding is a bit like that. The first time you do it, it will give you a load of commands that don't exist. It will give you PowerShell commands that look exactly like what you want, but they don't exist. They're just made up. Someone possibly wrote somewhere once on the internet, "I would love it if there was a command that was like, make me a VM." And it's just hoovered that up and just gone, that exists. But you can get there eventually. And the other option, of course, is a managed service, where you just ring someone up and say, "Can you make me a VM?" And that's a bit like getting in a taxi. So having said all that, and about this is more mature than that, and so on, the question here is really, do you need to be mature about this? Do you need to be using infrastructure as code and deploying your states and managing your states and running everything through a nice pipeline with all the approvals in? And I know a bit of consultancy. The answer is it depends. You don't necessarily. If there's one of you and you're making 10 VMs and they're all a bit different and they're all fairly static and they're going to stay like that, and you know how to do ClickOps, you're not going to save any time by doing the scripting. If you've got 50 VMs, yeah, it makes sense to take that on. If you've got somebody who already knows how to use Terraform, yes, take advantage of that. There will be other things that come along in the next couple of years that someone says, "Oh yeah, you should definitely be delivering your virtual machines like this. You should definitely be building your infrastructure like this." Yes, some of them are great, but they're not always necessary. And whilst I'd love to say, yeah, learn about them, I love learning about all the different technologies that are out there, don't be worried that you're the only one not doing it. Because I think that's very easy to see. You see people come along and they'll talk, "Oh yeah, I'm using this latest and greatest thing. I've got my company fully automated to do everything this," and I just wander in the door and wave my thumbprint over it and it spins up a new data center. Not everybody needs that. And you're definitely not the only person still running a PowerShell script or clicking on things because it's just quicker to get the job done. So that concludes my brief foray into DevOps and ClickOps and ScriptOps, which I did Google, and it is actually a thing, so I didn't just make that one up. Has anyone got any questions or discussion points around that they'd like to share with the group?
Yeah, question. So my question is in terms of the automation.
Yep.
So what is the futuristic advantage of automation that refers to the
ClickOps? So the advantages are you can do it at scale. That's the big one. If I want to make 1,000 virtual machines, I just say, when in my Terraform, I just change a variable at the top to say 1,000, and it pumps out 1,000 virtual machines. If I was doing that in ClickOps, I'm like, be there for weeks.
Does it help with things like scaling?
Yep, you can turn on auto scaling and things. You've got and if you want to change it in the future, so when you've got that scaling turned on and you want to have up the memory on all of them from 4 gig to 8 gig, you just change that variable from 4 to an 8 in the script and run it again. So yeah, it works at massive scales.
I think it's maintenance as well. I mean, if your machines are all stateless, it's quicker to tear them down in week.
Yeah. Yeah, if you don't care about what's on that C drive, you can just throw them all away, build them all up again. New version of Windows, I'm not going to do a manual upgrade on 1,000 machines. I'm going to throw those 1,000 machines away and build 1,000 new ones. You've got good documentation. Like I was sort of saying about having that set of instructions that I can hand to someone else. If you've done anything in code, and it's well written code, you've essentially got some documentation there of what you're creating, and you can quite often run that through some automated tools, and it will take your Terraform code or your PowerShell code, and it will write a document about this is what you've built. So you can show someone else how to do it. You can say, here's the script, here's the code I used, go off and do it. And they can do it exactly the same way. So it's consistent.
And you also got financially regulated industries that like to see things done consistently, and they should improve that they've done consistently. So by doing it through code of any sort, the audit is much healthier. So there's big users there to safely through it.
And I think we saw from our OVH talk earlier, they were saying how they get their environment to be the same, all their environments to be the same up-to-date version, or that particular version that you were going with. And because you've done that in code, I'm going from version 7 to version 8. This is what we need to do. We've done exactly the same thing on all of those environments. They are now in 8.0 updates 3B part 2 or whatever. However long VMware's version naming gets that week. So yeah, scalability, reliability, consistency, repeatability is the automation thing, and that's however you do your automation. If you do it in code, if you've got area automation, that I was about to say, we realised. Sorry, an automation tool, or you've got your own code. That sort of process of doing that would be how I do it.
I think you nailed it on the consistency side of things, because and also where you just give your code to someone else. So if you're in an organization that you've got application developers who don't know VMware or vSphere, and they put a ticket into you, please can you deploy a VM? Can you deploy a VM? Your life becomes deploying a VM all the time. They can't focus on anything new and fun and great. So with this, is that they can just click and say, I just need this many CPU, this similar to how it is in AWS or anywhere else, right?
So you can tie it into ITSM tools like ServiceNow as well. So the end user puts a request in, it gets approved, then that automatically triggers the pipeline to build at the end. Actually, a text and it extracts conditions involved in any part of that process. So they only get the call, but as a problem, they've been going to use their skill set much better and more effectively build organization than then going through and click. Not a big paying of third line technicians in going build a VM manually.
Yeah, you want to kind of automate yourself out of a job, but don't do it so well that you are out of a job. But yeah, you want to do the big exciting stuff. You know, building your first VM is exciting. Building your second VM is slightly less exciting. When you've been doing it for years, it's I was chatting to someone the other day and they said, you know, oh yes, we use VMware, but it's not exciting. It's just that's, you know, here's the products we're working with, and that's VMware. Yes, it's very important. But it's not exciting, and it's not because it's become that commodity. And you know, working on the tools, if you can automate that, you can go on and you can do the exciting stuff of linking those VMs together in a great way, or you know, making them run faster, getting that extra few % out of the performance and all those bits, because you've got you're not using your time up going new VM, click, click, click. Oh, I got that one wrong. Hang on. Yeah. So yeah. Any other questions or comments or? No. Cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah,